Hello and good evening everyone, and welcome back. I've got my book, but no therapy friends again tonight because they need time off, I think. I've been feeling pretty good lately, so I decided to let them enjoy themselves for a bit, rather than having to worry about me every 5 seconds. Hope you remember where we were, because I'm not going back. That's what the previous videos are for. So without further ado, they learned parent, adult, child either in a hospital group or in individual sessions in my office. When the concept was understood by both partners, there was eagerness expressed to join one of the existing married coupled groups of 5 couples each. The average number of treatment sessions for each couple was 17, roughly 1 session a week for 4 months. My married couples groups are scheduled for the last hour of the day for 1 hour, but occasionally may run longer. Excuse me. Of these 37 couples, 35 to my knowledge are still married. 2 are divorced. Not bad odds. Not bad at all. 4 of these 35 dropped out of the group because they would have had to give up their games and were unwilling to do so. Oh, 4 people. Soon they just said 2 guys. The other 31 couples reported good transactions in their marriages. I think they got the numbers wrong here. It says 37 couples, 35 still married, 2 are divorced, but then it goes on to say 4 of these 35. Oh, I get it now. I get this now. Okay, I'm just being, a bit silly. So let's go back. Of these 37 couples, hold on to that number, people, 35 are still married, 2 are divorced. 4 of these 35 dropped out of the group because they have had to have given up their games and were unwilling to do so. So, essentially 4 couples said, sod this, we don't need this therapy crap, and we're going to go home and be miserable as God intended. Essentially. Oh, by the way, just so you know, God doesn't want you to be miserable. None of the gods want you to be miserable, okay, people? If you're an atheist, then you should know this already. No one wants you to. The only people who do want you to be miserable are not worth ignoring. Or, sorry, they're not worth acknowledging, really. In fact, you should be happy just to annoy those people. You know? You know what I mean. The other 31 couples reported good transactions in their marriages, in which each partner is now finding the excitement of new goals. The relative absence of old destructive games in the achievement of intimacy. In achieving one of the original goals of treatment, that of saving the marriage, we can report an 84% success with this group of patients. That's pretty impressive. The relationship of many couples is a complicated mesh of games, where an accumulated resentment and bitterness have produced intricate, repeated versions of uproar. It's all you, blemish. So's your old man. If it weren't for you, I could. The rules and stereotype plays in these games are catalogued in great detail and Burns' Games People Play, a book we discussed earlier in the book. I'm not going to read it though. Because, well, reasons. Which has been one of the standard manuals assigned for reading to couples in treatment. Well, if I'm honest, people, the main reason I'm not reading is because it's not so much a mental health book, it's more of a marriage book. I mean, if I was to get married and start a channel about marriage, then maybe. Just maybe. These games all grow from the early childhood game of Mine is Better, designed to overcome the original fear of being cheated. One of the most brilliant exposés of a game existence is written by Edward Albee in the already mentioned Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. This play illustrates that despite all the desperation produced, there still are enough secondary benefits that the games, in a sense, hold the marriage together. Some marriages are held together by virtue of one sick partner. That partner begins to get well and begins to refuse to get involved in the old games, the marriage begins to fall apart. One husband, whose wife had just been released after a 10-day stay in the hospital, called me in a state of consternation saying, "My wife seems happier and better, but now I can't get along with her at all." Marriage is like posture. If the soldiers begin to droop, a complementary droop must develop somewhere else to keep the head perpendicular to the feet. Similarly, if one partner changes, other changes must complement this in order to keep the relationship intact. This is one of the major weaknesses of the old types of psychotherapy, where the psychiatrist treated only one partner and refused to even talk with the other partner. The emphasis was on the relationship established between the psychiatrist and the patient, leaving the marriage relationship outside the door. As the patient's loyalty and behaviour began to change, the marriage frequently suffered because the other partner had no conceptual tools with which to understand what was going on or to understand its own accumulation of fury and despair. If you could afford it, the other partner might enter treatment, not might not. I did a not there for no reason. Let's start again, shall we? If you could afford it, the other partner might enter treatment with someone else only to become further estranged as he too shifted the object of his affection. With little basis for communication, the way was open for new and better ways to play mine is better, in the form of my therapist is better than your therapist, or I'm overcoming transference faster than you are, or I'll make a decision about whether to make love to you after my session Wednesday. Both were indulging their child in exclusive introspection, which, though it may have provided useful data as to the origin of their own feelings, did not truly come to grips with the reality of an existence of not one person, but two people in a relationship called marriage. An item in the Sacramento Bee, I'm going to assume that's a newspaper, though perhaps a bit extreme, is nonetheless pertinent. Many psychiatrists insist there is no mental emotional health if a man does not face reality. If that be the case, why do they make their patients lie on couches where it is so easy to daydream? Never thought of that. Maybe a spiked mattress would be better. No, it wouldn't. That would just be painful. Each partner must be willing to acknowledge his complicity in the difficulties of the marriage, but its all-you point of view is exposed as fallacious by Emerson in his observation that no man can approach me except through my own act. The husband has been abusive for 10 years and the wife has taken it for 10 years, then she, in her way, has participated in the exchange. If either partner refuses to acknowledge his complicity, there is little hope for change. Now, I'm just going to leave a little disclaimer here, and I've done a few. Just because someone is stuck in an abusive relationship doesn't mean they've somehow decided to play along with it. Sometimes people stay with abusive partners due to lack of other options. Sometimes they worry about the safety of another person, usually, let's say, like a child or a pet. Sometimes they do, but sometimes there's usually another reason. And just because you know someone's stuck in an abusive relationship, try not to judge them. You know, because they may be thinking about a way out, they may be scared, they may have other issues that keeps them there. We don't know. Just be nice, is generally what I'm trying to say. Arthur Miller, in his sensitive story about Maggie in After the Fall, the character who bore a striking resemblance to his wife Marilyn Monroe, wrote that his play was about the human animal's unwillingness or inability to discover in himself the seeds of his own destruction. And here's a quote: "It is always and forever the same struggle. To see somehow our own complicity with evil is a horror not to be borne. It is much more reassuring to see the world in terms of totally innocent victims and totally evil instigators of the monstrous violence we see all about us. At all costs, never disturb our innocence. But what is the most innocent place in any country? Is it not the insane asylum? These people drift through life truly innocent, unable to see into themselves at all. Perfection of innocence indeed is madness." I do not agree with that. I know some people are probably getting annoyed and saying, "Jim, just read the damn book." But no, you're going to get my views. Not everyone in a mental home is going to be ignorant in that way. Some will be truly aware of their problems and will probably most likely be in some serious personal mental crisis about it. And in those days, a lot of mental homes were abusive. They really were. I've read a few stories about people who would go to a place like this and they'd just be chained to a radiator all day long. And just get told to get on with it. As if somehow life works like that. Things are better now. In my country anyway. I know there's a lot of countries where things aren't quite great still. But I like to think the world is getting there at least. This horror not to be born is understandable when one considers that the admission of complicity adds still another load to the crushing not okay burden, which has caused the problem in the first place. The admission of guilt is hard. It is this final affront to the abject child, this additional burden. If I can turn the flipping page. That is referred to by the German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer. If not, is not this to lay another and still heavier burden on men's shoulders? Is this all we can do when the souls and bodies of men are groaning beneath the weight of so many man-made dogmas? That comes from the book by Dietrich Bonhoeffer called The Cost of Discipleship, just in case you're interested and want to read it yourself. Understanding structural analysis, the nature of the parent, adult and child shows us a way out of this dilemma of on the one hand, Understanding structural analysis, the nature of the parent, adult and child shows us a way out of this dilemma of on the one hand the impossibility of change without the admission of complicity, and on the other the crushing implications of the admission of guilt. In a very practical way, we can see a difference in how we confront a person with what he does. If one says you are a cranky, ill-tempered, difficult, unpleasant person, and this is what is wrong with your marriage, one is simply supporting the not okay position and producing things that may make the person even more cranky, ill-tempered, difficult and unpleasant. Either that or you drive him into a deepening depression. On the other hand, one can sympathetically, it is your not okay child that constantly makes trouble for you, and by reacting in the old cranky and ill-tempered way to destroy your chances for happiness in the present. There is some objectification of the dilemma, and the person sees himself not as a total zero, but as a combination of past experience, both plus and minus, which produces difficulty. Moreover, it makes possible a choice. A person can acknowledge this reality about himself without falling apart, and this acknowledgement can begin to strengthen his adult for its function of examining the parent and the child, and the way in which these old tapes come on to produce the tyranny of the past. Without the acknowledgement of my part in our problems, transactional analysis or game analysis can simply become another way of expressing hatred. You and your damn parent. Your nasty child is coming on again, dear. There you go, playing a game again. These constructions then become clever and abusive epithets in a new game of game calling. As we see the problems that can arise, we begin to understand the significance of the data expressed in the title of Arthur Miller's article about his play, with respect for her agony, but with love. Commitment to this idea is what is required of couples entering treatment. If they are to succeed in building something of value in their marriage, a final question emerges. When we stop playing games, then what do we do? What else is there? What else do you do with an emancipated adult? And that, people, is where we end it tonight. As that is the end of the little mini chapter within the chapter itself. Now, I hope you've all learned something tonight. And as I've often said in these videos, please, for the love of God, be nice to each other, alright? So you don't know what another person's going through, okay? So until next time, take care of yourselves, alright? I want you to know that I love each and every single one of you, alright? Bye.